Hello everyone, so in this video we are going to discuss the first problem which came in BMath BStat 2022. So the problem was easy. Let's find out what the problem was. So consider a board having 2n cells where you have 2 rows and n columns, and now each cell will be filled up by either zeros or ones. Now in part A you are asked that in how many ways can this be done such that each row sum and each column sum is even. Okay, now you have to note that 0 is also an even number. So suppose first let's concentrate on the first row. So suppose whatever I have these ones, okay, so wherever I have doesn't matter, 1 0 0, so all I know is that the first row should sum up to be even, so that means there has to be even number of ones. Okay, so 1 1 0 1 0 0, for example this one. Okay, and then I know that each column should also be even, so wherever I see that a 1 is present, so there I also need to place a 1 below it, otherwise that column won't sum up to be even, and wherever there is 0 I have to place a 0 below it. Okay, so I just have to repeat what is there in one of the rows after I have made sure that that particular row is summing up to be even. So then what am I actually doing? From the n columns, so I'm just concentrating on the first row. So from the n columns I'm just choosing even number of places, right? And so basically from n columns I'm choosing 2k, or from n cells I'm choosing 2k cells for the first row where I'll be placing those ones. So where k can run from 0 to n by 2, the floor function of n by 2. Okay, so this is the answer for the first one, because once the first row is done there is nothing, just copy the first row, or similarly if you are doing with the second row then just copy it in the first row and nothing else. So that was easy, but now let's look at the second part. In how many ways can this be done such that each row sum and each column sum is odd? Okay, so now each row and each column sum should be odd. So first note that again if we proceed with a similar idea, okay, so that is, if you let's see. So now this time what should I do? Suppose I'll again concentrate on the first row, okay, and I know that I'll have to place odd number of ones there. So okay, 1 2 3 4 5, for example this one I have to place odd number of ones, and now so the sum is odd for the first row. Now I have to make sure each column sum should also be odd, and so wherever I see a 1 I should place 0 below it, and wherever there is 0 I have to place 1. Okay, so this is the strategy. Okay, and this is the only strategy. Like if there is 0 and 1, I mean if you can either place 0 or 1. So with 0 if you are placing 0 then it's even, with 1 if you are placing 1 again it's even. So but you want the sum to be odd, and so 0 1 0. And now notice one thing, that is there is a little bit change here, so it's not exactly like the first case. So here in this second case, so this is the answer for the first part. For the part B, what is happening is that from the first row there are n cells. From there I have to choose, suppose 2k plus 1 cells, that means odd number of cells. Okay, and so k is summing up from 0 to n minus 1 by 2 floor function. But that's not all. Please note that if n is odd, okay, so if your n is odd, then the first row, the sum will be, suppose the sum is equal to s, okay, and s is odd, and then the second row sum will be, because there are n cells, and if I have put s number of ones in the first row, and so now I'm just doing the complement in the second row, so that means n minus s ones will be there in the second row, and thus if now s is odd, right, s is odd, and so that implies s minus n minus s is even if n is odd. So if n is odd, the answer is 0. So if n is odd, answer is 0, and this is the case when n is even. So let's write it nicely. Okay, sorry. So this is the case if n is even and 0 if n is odd. So try to note down that in the first case, since the sum was even, and also like the number of ones in both the rows and the columns were matching, and so if the sum was even, then the sum was also even in the second row. But here we have to place the complements, and so if s number of ones are there in the first row, so n minus s number of ones will be there in the second row, and s has to be odd in our case too, or part B, and thus if n is odd, then the sum of the second row is coming up to be even, and which is not allowed in part B, and thus there is no way that we can place the zeros and ones and fulfill the condition, and so the answer is 0 if n is odd, and if n is even, then it's fine. If you are placing s number of ones in the first row, then n minus s, so s is odd, n is even, then again the n minus s is even, n minus s is odd, and thus the sum is odd in the second row also, and the column wise we have taken the complement, so the sum is also odd. So that's the way we can do it when n is even, and in case of even we have to just choose from n cells, we have to choose odd number of cells, that is of the form 2k plus 1, where k will be running from 0 to floor function of n minus 1 by 2. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.